of law has been a consistent thorn in Poland's side since the populist PiS party took office in 2015 and remained until 2023. Rule of law has come up again as the European Court of Justice dismissed Poland's attempts to rebuff a €320 million fine over rule of law breaches from 2019. To understand this a little better, I'm joined by the Minister for Justice, Mr. Bodnar. He's here to get into the weeds of this issue. It's also important to note that he was not holding this top position while those alleged breaches occurred. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to talk.
What was your reaction when you read the news this morning of that ruling from the ECJ?
I was not surprised because it is the judgment that is a result of the ongoing discussion concerning rule of law in Poland, and in fact non-enforcement by Polish authorities in 2021 of the interim measure that concerned the system of disciplinary accountability for Polish judges. So to a great extent it is a consequence of the fact that for almost 2 years this system was existing. It has been eliminated more or less in 2023, but still the money that has been adjudicated at this time, individual penalties for each day of violating the EU law are there. So basically, as I understand, the Court of Justice had to give that kind of a judgment that is looking back into the past.
And do we know whether or not Warsaw will appeal this decision?
You know, for us, the most important aspect of the whole thing is repairing the rule of law, which means that we have to rebuild the whole system. We have to make the evaluation of all the judges that have been appointed after 2018. We have to make a new system of disciplinary accountability. We must stop undue pressure against judges. We have to rebuild the National Council of Judiciary as well as the Supreme Court. In my opinion, we did a lot in order to achieve this task, and that is the reason why we are not any longer subject to Article 7 procedure of the EU, and moreover, the money from the EU Recovery Fund has been unblocked with respect to Poland. So when it comes to this particular judgment, I will have to check to what extent we have a still possibility of appealing, but we know well that we have to face certain, unfortunately, financial consequences of things that happened before 2023, before elections of October 2023. Please note that it is not just the only financial consequence for us. We are also losing a lot of cases before the EU Court of Justice. And so that is unfortunately the cost of those changes those illiberal changes that were made in Poland during that time.
What do you think this ruling says about the PiS party?
You know, we are not very much surprised because there were so many reports, statements, positions, judgments of both Court of Justice of the EU as well as the European Court of Human Rights that we know what is the diagnosis of the system that has been built. We are happy that we are in a position of rebuilding the whole system, but for what is important to me is not to forget about this difficult period in our history. And second, it is important to look forward with different mechanisms of accountability for past abuses. And that is basically what is happening right now in Poland. So we are moving forward, we are repairing the state, but we are not forgetting about past abuses of the democratic system. And please look, we are talking about judicial independence, but we have such issues like the abuse of the Pegasus spyware. We have a lot of financial abuse by Polish authorities. We had, you know, even a situation when presidential elections were going to be organized, but at the end of the day, because of political reasons, they were not organized by the Polish state. Law has spent on this more or less 30 million euros on the organization. So a lot of different cases for which we are doing proper accountability mechanisms.
Going back to rule of law, the most recent European Commission report into Poland and it upholding some of its responsibilities as part of the treaty, it outlined that a corruption program from 2018 to 2020, an anti-corruption program, wound up with no replacement. It also highlighted that there were still serious concerns related to the independence of the Polish judiciary and Supreme Court judges. Obviously, there's been a year since this report was handed down. Can you talk about the specific progress in relation relation to those things that I've raised?
I think the progress is very much visible. I think what the prosecutor's office is doing on a daily basis is a big fight against corruption by making different cases concerning the abuse of position by state officials. Moreover, we are reforming the Central Anti-Corruption Office, which has the rank of the special service, and the Central Anti-Corruption Office quite often has been used in order to achieve mostly political purposes and not like a typical fight against corruption. Right now, the Central Anti-Corruption Office would become a part of simply police and the special units of the police. And there is also a lot of talk and a lot of measures introduced in order to increase transparency of public expenses, transparency of spending, proper public procurement rules. Like, for example, even in my Ministry of Justice, we are disclosing details concerning all agreements, all contracts that are entered into by the ministry, and that kind of approach based on transparency plus responsibility of different state offices is, in my opinion, one of the best ways to fight corruption.
This report also highlighted that there has been no progress on separating the function of the Minister of Justice from that of the Prosecutor General. It's my understanding that this is a dual role that you hold. Is there appetite within your government to separate them out?
Yes, that's true that I'm at the same time Minister of Justice and the Attorney General. It is one of the major projects of the government. The law is already prepared. I hope that by the end of February we'll adopt this law as the draft governmental law that would be submitted to the Parliament. And by the end of the year we'll be able to not only to pass this law but also to select the new Attorney General, the new independent from politics. Moreover, please note that this law has been subject of review by the Venice Commission. So in our draft law, we implement all the recommendations by the Venice Commission.
So Poland has a bit of a reputation in terms of rule of law, but we know obviously there's a new government, things are changing. How can Warsaw repair its image, especially on an EU level when it comes to rule of law?
I think our role is, first of all, to be a loyal EU member states in the context of the EU presidency, just to show during the presidency that we take care about laws, about standards, about human rights compliance and the rule of law compliance. And moreover, one of the major ideas for the presidency is to talk about what is the role of the civil society, bar associations, academia, in terms of supporting rule of law in different EU member states, not only in Poland, but taking into account Polish perspective in this regard. But I think what matters here is basically whether we are going forward with changes, whether we are able to undo this illiberal trend that we had in Poland, whether we may create or recreate responsible institutions, courts that are independent, prosecutor's office that is working in a responsible way towards the society, and whether we can be able, by virtue of number of legislative reforms, but also practical change the way how this Polish state operates. And I think that if we do it, and I do believe that we'll be able to do it, we'll be able to create like the new vision of Poland, of a country that is supporting not only its own internal legal system, but it's also creating a little bit like the vaccination for all other EU member states by having this like a practical knowledge how to get rid of those illiberal trends.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you very much for your attention.
So as we've just heard from Brussels, we're hearing that changes are afoot in Warsaw when it comes to rule of law. We'll see how some of those other measures pan out, particularly in the run-up to that presidential election in the middle of the year. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.